All right, thank you. So just a quick note here, folks. I have never used Zoom from my phone. And the reason that I'm using Zoom from my phone is because 20 minutes ago, I lost power. Our campus lost power. And I tried to make it home in time. I tried to make a 20-minute drive in 25 minutes. And there's a train blocking. So I am currently on my phone in the high school parking lot. So we're going to see how this goes. There's going to be a few little rough spots, but we are going to do our best to get through it. So let me introduce myself. My name is Joseph Coates. I'm the reference librarian coordinator and university archivist at Purdue University Northwest, and I'm presenting with my coworker Ian Hughes, and let's go ahead and get started. Ian, next slide, please. We are here today virtually and in person in the land of the Illinois, Miami, and Potawatomi Native Nations. We gratefully acknowledge as our collective heritage the land and labor of both. This area is known as the Calumet region, and those were some of the main Indian tribes that we had in the area, or Native American tribes in the area, and we need to be conscious of that. So thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So at a glance, let's see, who are we? Purdue University Northwest is a metropolitan university located in Northwest Indiana. We are part of the Purdue system. We cover two campuses, both located about 40 miles apart, one of which is sort of in a bedroom community of Chicago, where I grew up, about 10 minutes from the Chicago border. The other campus is in the middle of the one of the most diverse crop growing areas in Indiana. So we cover quite a bit. It's not unusual to have students from the Hammond campus talk about missing class because they were stuck by a train, for example, from the steel mills, or I've had some students who have had trouble getting to classes in Westville because they had to help their parents change a tire on a tractor. So we do cover a very diverse area up here. We serve approximately 9,300 undergraduate and graduate students. We did start our DMP program a couple years ago, so we now do offer a PhD program. So next slide, please. So couple of the interesting things that started, we are a land grant institution. Purdue, for those of you who don't know, is sort of like our A&M place here in the state of Indiana. Up through history, both Indiana University and Purdue University covered courses in the area that sort of catered to the area. Both of these places were founded, both campuses were founded in 1947, and they were primarily created to cater to post-GI Bill industrial workers and farmers. Now we are primarily, we still serve the same mission, but we're primarily first generation and traditionally underserved students. We do have a little bit of a poverty issue in Northwest Indiana. For those of you who don't know, one of our large service areas is Gary, Indiana. So for those of you who do know where that is, those are our students. Our faculty is primarily focused on teaching and less about research, unlike the main campus, which is an R1 institution. So we have had a little bit of a different history than other places. Budget-wise, we are much more of a line item to Purdue than we are an actual campus. So that causes other issues. So let's go ahead to the next slide, please. Right. So our library, before COVID, we did more traditional instruction. We were more passive, so we didn't really market. We were sort of in the realm of, well, we're here if you need us. For a long time, we didn't even go to the classrooms. We really made the students come to our classrooms in the library. We started to adapt with the changes after a while. because we saw that that was a need. We didn't really do any marketing, and we were more needs-based. So we had certain instructors that would work with us, or we had freshman orientation students, or we had, oh, this group really doesn't get it. Can you show up for our class? As far as our collection development policy, we were very old school in that. When I started, we were just sort of getting into audiovisual items. I never agreed with a lot of that, but that was sort of the culture that we had. Very much more paper-based items, paper books. We didn't have a lot of ebook collections. We were primarily electronic database still, so we did innovate some, but we didn't really. We were very not opposed to change, but we never really got around to it. So we weren't forced to innovate, but we still did. And how were, what do we do now that we were forced to innovate due to COVID? And finally, the question that we all need to ask ourselves is, were we effective? So next slide, please. Again, I want to apologize. I don't have my notes in front of me, so this is going to be a little bit quicker than I had timed. Ian can fill the rest of the time for me. Instruction during COVID. So how were we going to conduct COVID, instruction during while we were at home? How were we going to communicate with each other while we were remote? How were we going to conduct outreach? When we went into lockdown in March, there really wasn't much of a concern, because by March, we've already done most of our instruction for the year. We're going to fill in a little bit here and there, but how are we going to do this over the summer? How are we going to look at it in the fall and onward? How are we going to sort of communicate with people what we were going to do, all while not being around? How were we going to use technology and implement it? Did we have the technology we needed? We had so many questions that we really just didn't have an answer to, because this was sort of thrust upon us. As any of you know that work in higher education is not, things don't move expediently. We didn't have time to form 18 committees for this and talk about it for 6 years. We really kind of had to shoot from the hip here on this one. So what were we going to do? Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So some of the questions that we had during planning were kind of hard to answer. We really didn't know, what is everybody's comfort level with technology? As part of the Purdue system, we actually have great technology. We have Kaltura, Camtasia. We use LibGuides. We have WebEx and Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Office 365 and the Google Suites and all this stuff. But technology is not going to do us any good if we don't know how to use it. And if people aren't comfortable with it, we didn't really want to force people in on using technologies that they weren't comfortable with, because you're just setting people up for failure. How polished were these, were our presentations going to be? I know when I go into a classroom and do a presentation, I kind of have a standard thing that I do, but I have time to think about it. But you're also talking in person, so you have those and pauses, and you make mistakes. With video editing, you have the luxury of being able to go back through, but did we need to? Issues with outreach. We didn't have a marketing plan really in place, and how were we going to deal with that? Issues with technology. Now that we're working from home, how are we going to access internet? How are we going to, use our technology at home in order to do what we needed to do? And finally, one of the issues that you have when you have a lot of technology at your hand was, what is your delivery method going to be, and what are you going to use? Are we going to put our things on YouTube? Are we going to put everything on Kaltura? Are they going to, So there were a lot of things that we really had to look at. that were tough. So let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So finally, the big question and kind of how we looked at it was, how do you conduct remote instruction with technology noobs while working with faculty unfamiliar with different technologies? And, what library services did we offer? So one of the issues, going back to what we talked about earlier, was the fact that we have a teaching-based faculty. A lot of those faculty are older faculty. A lot of them weren't comfortable with a lot of the technology that we offer. A lot of them haven't really updated some of their syllabus in years and don't really know what databases we have anymore. They've kind of become complacent. All of us can become complacent in areas, but this was an issue that we really had to look at. We also had some other changes that complicated matters a little bit. So we were in the midst of switching from Blackboard into Brightspace, and we were in that odd moment. I think I mentioned this yesterday as in one of the panels, that we were going to do like a 2-year transition from Blackboard to Brightspace. How are we going to do that? Like, do we have to learn 2 LMS at the same time in order to do this? So how are we going to approach everything, dealing with the issues that we had? And how are we going to communicate this? So Ian, next slide, please. So what instruction sessions were we going to conduct? Were we going to be doing what we normally do, which is a lot of your 100 level classes, 200 level classes, business courses, a lot of nursing. We have a large, very vibrant nursing community on our campus. It's one of our big draws. How are we going to deliver it? Were we going to use LibGuides? Were we going to be able to be embedded into these classes? Were we going to just do like office hours or something? We really didn't know, and a lot of the faculty didn't know either. So, we had never really had, other than the nursing department, an embedded librarianship program. And really, we didn't have a real embedded library program in place. We just sort of had a system, they had their own thing worked out. Some of the things that we really needed to look at was also, if we're doing these classes, are they going to be constructive and useful? We didn't want to waste our students' time. We didn't want to waste our time or our faculty's time in these sessions. So we really kind of had to plan on that. We also really wanted to know what we could learn and what we can use post-COVID. Once the world stops burning and all the fires are out, you start to rebuild. So whatever our new normal is going to be, which will probably be closer to what we had pre-COVID than post-COVID. What have we learned from this? What could we take? What could we extract out of all these ideas, and really make instruction better and the library better overall? Sorry, I need 1 second here. And how do we market these new skills after COVID? So we're going to do embedded librarianship. We're going to do pre-recorded things. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. How do we keep up with that? How do we market ourselves post-COVID, mixing the best of both of these skill sets that we've learned during COVID? Next slide, please, Ian. So what did we do? I'm going to go a little bit out of order for these, for what we really covered. The first thing that we did was we formed a marketing committee, and we really worked on what we offer and what we can do and how we market this. So we had things called like Tech Tip Tuesday, regular emails out of the director's office. We had we used a lot of social media to kind of get across what we were doing. Mission statement and goals. We had a mission statement and goals, but they weren't good. So what we really did is we beefed them up and kind of advertised what we actually had to offer the university, what our goals were. We had never really publicized our goals. And this gave us an opportunity to really say, hey, here's what we're in this for. Here's what we can do for you. We started an embedded librarianship program. Depending on the college, this looked a few different, it looked different for different places. So for example, the nursing department, we had our nursing librarian in every course. I was in some English courses and some history courses and comm courses, and we did that. We didn't have all the faculty buy-in, but we had more than we thought. There are some of the colleges that cover, let's say, if you're accepted into the College of Business, there is a Brightspace course for you that you are entered into, and we were able to put all of our information into that course. So we were able to reach anybody in College of Business with library instruction and LibGuides and all that. And then be flexible and responsive. You know, we had a lot of professors that wanted to, you know, have us meet 2 or 3 times throughout the semester, that had what seemed like kind of dumb questions at times, but things that we really needed to address. Quit looking at ourselves and saying, okay, this is a flaw that we have or something we haven't addressed yet. What do we do and how do we get there for them? So that's kind of what we looked at in general terms. And Ian, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. What did I encounter? Full disclosure, I'm not a reference librarian. So I was the university archivist. When we had some reshuffling, I became the head of reference, which I get it for you reference librarians. You're like, oh God, really? Yeah, you know, I could do it. So some of the things that we learned was that the embedded librarianship worked. It worked really well. The faculty that signed up for it really enjoyed it. It gave us all an opportunity to look at how we taught and how we went about getting our information across. A lot of options did not work. So if you give people too much variety, everybody wants something customized all the time for everything. And we just don't have the manpower, the energy, or the time to do that. So we really kind of had to cut back on options that we would offer. Like, oh, do you want Zoom or WebEx or that? No, here's what you're going to get. Sorry, you know. Collaboration with OIT works, or our Office of Information Technology that deals with all of our technology, our Brightspace and those type of things. Our collaboration with them worked really well. We got along well. We were able to answer a lot of questions. We were able to grow. Marketing may have worked. I'm always skeptical of if social media does what it does, and according to our algorithms, it went up slightly. But I don't know. Our marketing, I think, worked as far as what we deal with when we deal with faculty. I don't know if the marketing really worked with the students. Personalization, however, did work, and that's a little bit different than options. So personalization covered things like, are there specific databases that you want us to cover? Would you like your own library guide? You know, giving them some options, but not sort of saying the world is your oyster. Please feel free to ask of us what you will. So that part did work well. And our faculty was really responsive to it. So let's see. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, and this is a section where I turn this over to Ian. So Ian, take it away, please.
Great job with what you had to work with, Joe. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks.
I am Ian. My name is Ian Hughes. My job title at PNW is Instruction and Outreach Librarian. Some of my experiences are probably going to be different than Joe's. So strangely, in certain spots, the COVID shutdown made it easier to keep and develop some campus relationships. I can be a persistent person in terms of getting the library into academic departments or in terms of collaborations with support departments. Pre-COVID, when I was struggling to get a hold of someone, I was known to drop by an office and say hello. Sometimes even bring in food like snickerdoodles. I make a world famous snickerdoodle. But obviously in the COVID world, and maybe even post-COVID world, that might not be as easy. And it didn't always work out because, we're on two different campuses. Sometimes professors would have professors, and other departments would be, they'd be busy. They'd have classes or other things, and they wouldn't be on campus. But it was nice during COVID that wasn't really an excuse anymore. And I think a lot of people found that. So I was able to build by just saying, hey, let's jump on Zoom for 30 minutes and have a conversation, whether in the afternoon, in the morning, hey, let's have lunch together. And so that really was able to help out some of my outreach to the different departments. One of the first specifics I'm going to note is I am the liaison to the social work department. Fortunately, I already had a strong relationship with them. So in the past, they had invited me to professional development days, both on our campus and within the community, as well as they had me in all the information literacy sessions for each of the classes that require research. Again, fortunately, COVID didn't change any of that. I was still able to meet with them online. We planned our sessions accordingly. We worked to utilize the Zoom rooms to the best that we could. So that involved things like preloaded questions for active learning, as well as using the breakout rooms. And then it even allowed me to still stay in touch with the director. So the director and I usually met once a month for like dinner or lunch, and we would discuss. So she would keep me up on what's new with social work. I would keep her up on what's new with information literacy, and we would just chat. And so we were able to do that. And that still got me invited to things. So we had, they co-sponsored a project where they handed out food to community members of need in the university parking lot. Of course, it was socially distanced. We were putting it into the back of cars, but I was grateful to be asked to do that. And that creates goodwill with the department. I was able to connect with our students, and it's just good for our community. So it was those virtual meetings, I believe, that allowed me to continue to do well with the social work department. And then we have English and communications. This is more specifically the basic comp and speech classes. That's composition, sorry. We've tried and at times succeeded in the past to get into all of the basic and speech and composition classes. However, there is a rotating schedule of faculty and or those who are heading up those departments. And it seems like every year I'm trying to track down who is in charge and finesse that relationship. Lucky for us, due to an attempt to be more transparent by those departments, it was easier to track down the heads and have virtual meetings with them. Again, there was not a lot of I'm too busy because everyone was at home. And so I was not only able to build a solid relationship during this last year, and we got into most of the composition classes and into all of the speech classes, but then I'm hoping we have a strong relationship built with who may be in charge next year. And that's not just for instruction. I was actually talking with the head of who's going to be the composition professor about perhaps some OER stuff. So we've been able to build a lot of inroads there. Then there's the information literacy part. So like Joe said earlier, unfortunately, our professors are not big on the theoretical part of information literacy. It is hard to get them to understand that the theoretical works into the practical. There's a lot of them just wanting us to show databases. And so I'm always grateful anytime I can do more than that. Coming in and bringing in even active learning was something that was a to-do. So what we were able to do during this was, at least I was successful with implementing a flipped classroom into our sessions. And so the faculty didn't quite buy into that in the past, but the virtual sessions didn't provide the needed time to do certain things. So I was able to talk more faculty into getting their students to watch the videos before class, do a worksheet for assessment, and email it to me. From there, I was able to look at what was being understood and what was not being understood, and I knew what needed to be addressed in the class. And I was fortunate because in that setting, I was able to have those conversations, both theoretical and practical, for research. And then I knew where to assist students with the research. Some classes worked very well. And in some, I was staring at a lot of dark screens with no one wanting to participate. And I bet all of us at some point who did information literacy sessions dealt with that. But either way, I was grateful that we got the opportunity to try some of that. And I'm hoping that some of our faculty will buy into the flipped classroom method a little more going forward. And now I wanted to highlight some specific successes that I had. So I have a couple specific success stories. Several professors I worked with did not know how to work Zoom, one specifically for social work and one speech professor. I was able to help teach them how to use the breakout rooms. So something we did together, and I know, again, they really appreciated that. And then there was some screen sharing work that there was a couple things that they didn't know how to do as well. And so I was able to step in because I used Zoom, I think I was using those different features a little more than they were because I wasn't just doing a straight lecture style sessions. And then there was one specific professor who doesn't do technology well at all. And so we got on the phone several times before the session. We conversed. His wife helps him set up Zoom. So I was able to walk him through the process from my end and do the heavy lifting for the session. I also want to note, on a side note, his wife is a retired librarian. So we had a nice conversation before the session. Librarians unite. And I think in the end, we doubled our prestige with the faculty. And I think they were grateful for what we were able to help with. And I think they valued us more. And I know that will help us in the future get a little more buy-in, as I spoke about. And then I feel I should also note some failures because the only way to improve is to see where things don't always work. So there were some things that didn't always go as planned with other faculty. A couple told me they shared the videos for the session, but then students came in and said they were sent nothing, only to have the professor say, whoops. I actually heard that term, whoops, more than once, which is fine. We just work off of what we have. And then once or twice, faculty members agreed to meet in my room, and then they admitted that they forgot to send that link. So I had like the preset questions set up, and I had to throw those away and jump into their room. And so again, it was just working off the cuff and doing the best that I had. And then I had one specific professor, a composition professor. I don't believe there was any will harm. I just don't think she understood. But she muted me twice during our session. in the middle of me presenting, and I wasn't unmuted right away. It sounded like she was talking. And so our students had to more than once speak up and say, you know, I was muted to where I couldn't unmute myself. And so they had to speak up and say he's muted. And I have no clue why I was muted, if it was on purpose or not. She also didn't know how to use several of the other areas and ignored my attempts to help. So I don't, I just think technology, while it's good in some parts, I think in this particular instance was just really rough overall for the session. And then there was student involvement, as I alluded to earlier. I'm usually pretty good at getting students to talk in class, to converse with me, you know, not only about like the database, but the theoretical, going into, you know, why research is important, how we do research, you know, all those sorts of things, evaluating research. But it was very difficult. It was just a lot of blank screens, like I said at times. And then there was, you know, their feedback forms, which I use a lot to adjust my sessions. And I was not getting students to fill those out. I was not getting much feedback there. I would probably get 3 per a 30-person, 30-student class. So that was also something that I wish we could have done better with, but I don't know how I could have fixed that. And then I briefly wanted to get into support service collaborations, because I feel like support service collaborations help with the students and oftentimes get us to connect with faculty as well. As stated earlier, our collaborations with support services were not hurt by the campus shutdown. We did several workshops with the Writing Center, and I was able to do one with the Career Center. Additionally, we were able to better utilize asynchronous information literacy methods to help several departments reach their projected student population. So we were able to do more videos, like Joe said, the LibGuides, and many other forms of the asynchronous ways to connect with our community. And again, we hope this will build into more robust collaborations as we can become available in person. As we become available in person, and now we're also available virtually, as I had noted. The days of saying that I'm not available on campus, I'm going home now, may not work. So at least in the North, we've been told that the days of the snow days are gone. So are I'm going home at 2, and that's that. I think that's where we're at. So that's my end. And so we would like to open up for questions.
I actually have a question about snow days, and I know that sounds silly, but bear with me, it's actually fairly serious. There was some talk a couple of months ago about that with public schools, and how snow days were kind of like a celebration of nature and weather and et cetera. And I know some schools have carried over that tradition. They won't do online education during what they would classify as a snow day. And I gather Purdue is not taking that stance.
No, we endeavor to persevere. So we figured if we have the technology to do an entire 2 semesters online, we can do a snow day, or we can do a work from home day. It's actually the same with a lot of the local public high schools. They have switched over to, it's cold, or, a couple of years ago we had the polar vortex where it dropped to like 80 something below with wind chill, and they canceled everything. Now it's, go online until the phone lines freeze. So that's sort of the somebody from Western New York. Yeah, snow days too. So yeah, that's kind of how we're looking at it.
I have to tell you, as you get older, you say, how can I still connect back to my childhood a little bit? And those snow days were one of my last connections I had. So they took that away, and it broke my heart.
Yeah, my kids are bummed because they won't get to ever experience a snow day anymore. I've got high school daughters, so let's see. From Aaron, what was the biggest lesson we learned throughout this process? I would say that probably to just try new things and bring up ideas and see what you can do with what you have technology wise, or whatever you're looking at. We had some things that went well, some things that didn't go well, but I think looking at it as a whole, if somebody has an idea and it seems innovative, let's go with it. For example, we used to have the R drive, which was sort of all of our shared documents. We just moved the entire thing to Microsoft Teams, so everything's now cloud-based. Is that really the best idea? We're not sure, but that's the idea that we had, and we ran with it. So that's what I would say. What I learned, Ian.
Yeah, so that's kind of tough for me, because anything that we did would be stuff that I would be pushing towards, because I'm more of the progressive. Hey, we should be doing better. But I guess from my stance, maybe I learned that there are opportunities you take to try to convince administration that there are things you could be doing more, and to take those opportunities when you get them. In this case, it's unfortunate that it was this situation, but I guess I would say it's to be more. I'd like to think I was proactive before, but I became a lot more proactive in this situation in terms of administration saying, hey, we really need to do this. And if you didn't see it before, here's the time. So if not now, when? So that's probably what I would take away from it. 2 snow days in West Tennessee. Sorry.
Oh, when I was a kid, I had cousins that grew up in Owensboro, and they would call and they're like, "Oh, we're not going to school today because we got an inch of snow, and here we are with 1.5 foot." And you're like, "Well, I guess we're going."
Any
the
other
hurricanes sound frightening.
Were there any other questions for us, or? And I did see Andrea about the demo of snickerdoodles. I wish I could hand them all out to you. I just learned how to make a vegan snickerdoodle too, so.
I would take either regular or vegan, whatever you got.
Oh, also remember to send chat to everyone. Apparently not all, so have it on all panelists so everyone can see the conversation, please.
Yeah, that was me. I'm a little frazzled. I had to drive home while you were doing your part, so now I'm in the comfort of my air-conditioned basement.
It did. Someone mentioned what was the term there? It is diverged into cookies, and I apologize for that, and also my TARDIS picture in the back. I guess so. Use this as a part of. I'm gonna tie this into outreach, because I think I've been laughed at by librarians at times for saying this. Things like food are a great way to get into departments. They really are. And so with that, to replace, I didn't know this, to replace eggs for a vegan recipe, you can put in banana. And it was a banana tasting snickerdoodle. And it was amazing. So applesauce too, I see.
Yeah. So I guess since we have about 10 minutes left, if anybody's interested. So when Ian and I were when we were kind of planning this, we really kind of realized that we didn't have anything earth-shattering or super innovative, but we just really kind of wanted to talk about what we experienced in an academic library and how we dealt with it. So if anybody has anything that they really found helped, We've got a little bit of time left, so if you'd like to kind of open it up and we can do a little quick panel if anybody has anything that they have to share with us. Yeah. So, that's part of the real talk that we have to have at times about students being challenging, faculty challenges. I think one of the things that we do that's kind of detrimental, and this is something that I've been hearing since forever, is that our students are digital natives and we automatically assume that they are tech savvy. That's really, in our experience, has not been the case. They can film a TikTok video from their phone and send it out, but they don't know how to use educational technology well or software well. So while they may be more comfortable with things like ebooks or texting, a lot of our students were not comfortable with email. They aren't comfortable with Google Docs. They aren't comfortable with, basic Word documents. And that's something that we really need to look at, not just as librarians, but as educators as a whole, that in my humble opinion, that whole digital native is an excuse to throw technology at people and be lazy about training. We really need, I don't know how many times we've had students that have tried to do things on Chromebooks that just don't, and you're like, Chrome, it's not a real operating system, but they don't know. So it's something that we really need to address.
And I think we're at a point where we're in an area where the digital divide is very real. And so I think that's something that I know that's something Joe and I have, again, tried to get certain people to understand, not in the library, but I don't mean to keep harping on the administration, but try to get certain people to understand that there is that divide, and they may not have the resources. And so we need to help them get the resources and learn how to use those resources.
So I wanted to comment on Aaron saying that we have some students that write papers on their phones. Yeah, we had students that, because of their socioeconomic situation, they would conduct Zoom. They would. I remember a couple of them were using the Wi-Fi hotspot outside of the Taco Bell and didn't want to turn their camera on because they knew that, and that's something that we really need to, remember, that some of the students, especially the students that we serve, are not going to have all the benefit of more affluent areas.
And I think that's why, although I lamented the dark screen, I would much prefer a dark screen than someone spending the entire class, I don't know what the term is right off the top of my head, but feeling vulnerable about what their background is at or where they're at. Because the point of being there ultimately is to try to pick up as much as we can give them, get them understanding information literacy. And so I'll take that to whatever degree, and I'm so proud of them for even being there.
Yeah, we would check out Chromebooks also, and yeah, the bandwidth, huge issue. I live right on the border between civilization and corn, and our bandwidth isn't the best here at times. We had issues with Chromebooks where a lot of, they're kneecapped if they have to use a specific browser or specific software. And they, if we don't test it out, we don't know either. So we ran into the situation where we were checking out Chromebooks that our university had acquired from a grant that turned out to be fairly useless in a lot of cases. So that didn't work out well. Yeah, exactly. You can't use them to take exams. So I think a lot of the students, because they use my daughter uses Chromebook for high school, but they're geared for it. Like, they intentionally use it because they use Google Suite, they use Canvas, which seems to be a lot happier to use Chrome. But a lot of what we use, like our nursing department has a lockdown browser, things like that. you can't really use it. So, yeah. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left. So does anybody else have anything?
I'm grateful to everyone who came out today and asked questions and joined the conversation.
And thank you for being patient and understanding. I can't imagine what it was like listening to me sitting in a parking lot. So, and thank you to whoever paused my microphone that I forgot about pausing. So.
Y'all did a fantastic job, and Joe, you sounded great from the high school.
Oh, that's good. Good. I'm glad.
I mean, I have to give you props for, doing a presentation in the car, then at home. I mean, wow, I'm impressed.
Look, this comes down to using the technology that you have and
Yes.
improvising. If I could do this, our students can do it. We could do it. Hopefully.
That is the very definition of being adaptable. That was great. Thank you all so much. If anybody has any final points, Aaron said, this has been very validating for my experience. The new and innovative and theoretical is so excited to me, but I don't have the chance to really do it with my students. Yeah, same, Aaron.
Oh, need my skills? Oh boy. I have coworkers who would I'm the one that gets made fun of for, they said if you need to put out a 15-minute video, it's going to take me 16 minutes. I have to turn it off and on. I'm used to just flying by the seat of my pants. I can't plan anything though. That's problematic.
I keep trying to tell him a script is very important when you're doing those videos.
You had different approaches, but you both did great. So.
Yeah. And when it comes, what Aaron said about chance to do it with your students, one of the things that we've done is really starting small, doing like virtual office hours, like try a thing or two every semester and really kind of grow from there. One of the, going from having nothing to a full-fledged embedded librarian program is not going to happen. I believe, I can't remember who it was yesterday. Angel is an actual embedded librarian where they work. Mm-hmm. So the expectations for you are going to be a little bit higher, where the rest of us trying to get into this, start small, try to make meaningful, useful steps and really look at what do the students really need and go from there.